I think I'm live. We'll find out. All right. Move some stuff around. We are doing some homebrewing. What does that mean? Well, this is my first live stream. I failed to do this previously. I don't know if it's currently on. I think it is. We'll see if anyone joins. Let's see if I can find out if it's currently on. Yeah, I think it's on. All right. If people join the chat, awesome. If they don't, they don't. It's all good. What am I going to do? I've got a couple things I'm going to do. I've got this homebrew. I've just turned in my manuscript for Scattered Isles, and I recently posted a video some of you saw on that character sheet that I was kind of working on, and that got me thinking about some stuff, and so here I am continuing to think about some stuff. I thought I'd get some like office hours in, get some work done, and yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to, it would be nice if I could put this, put a shareable link. So let's see if I can do that real quick. Publish. Let's publish a shareable link. Not duplicate the there we go. Getting a shareable link. Let's see if I can get into this thing. All right, let's find, do this whole thing. Let's go to manage. Oh, here we go. Edit title and description. Description, boom. There is a link there. All right, so now there's a link so you can follow along if you so desire. All right, so resolution. We already kind of know what's going on here. I kind of already showed it, where we have this idea of it's a rollover resolution, and so a lot of this home brewing. The reason I call this home brewing and Frankensteining, that's a long name. Home brewing and Frankensteining is because I'm just going to be taking a lot of other game ideas and combining them. And I have some of my own ideas I'm putting in there, but this is like, I'm homebrewing, right? I'm going to try this out with my friends and family and just see what happens. So the first thing is rollover. I like rollover, right? That's very vagabondy, but let me put the big time influences for this. Vagabond, ICRPG, Crown and Skull, a lot of Runehammer, Draw Steel, Cosmere, RPG, probably some 5e. I mean, there has to be, right? And then obviously my Scattered Isles, right? So that's probably the combo of games that are in there. Let me do live chat. Oh, that's how I can do live chat. There we go. Now I can see it. There's no one in it, but it's all good. All right. So that's the influences. So this is obviously more vagabondy, where you're rolling over for success. And I think I like these numbers as of now. I haven't tested it, so it is what it is. Now, in this, it's sort of vagabond rollover. I don't have to write the influence. And then you have effort, right? So the resolution is vagabond rollover, and then effort die associated with skill and attribute for effect, right? So this is like going to be damage or progression of stuff. Simple as that. I will have some sort of graze mechanic for damage, but we'll get there. That's very Cosmere RPG. All right, so that gives us our resolution mechanic. I think that the next thing kind of to talk about is probably momentum. So, well, yeah. So momentum that's my jam. So from Scattered Isles, I love it. If you don't know anything about it, that's fine. No problem. But what it is it's a momentum is a resource that is both a meta currency and it's your health. So it's really fun. The players have really enjoyed it, and so I'm going to use it again. However, I'm switching it up. In my game, momentum was so it is d6s. So momentum is a pool of d6s. Starting at 3 and increasing as your constitution increases. Momentum lives in 3 different areas, and this is where it's different than Scattered Isles. Scattered Isles uses Vault, Active, and Spent. This is going to use Stamina, Power, and let's do this. Stamina, Power, Fatigue. Starting place. Man, I can't spell. That's all right. Starting place. All right. So, what's going on here? Well, momentum it's going to be in your stamina to begin, and then as you do stuff. So we'll talk about sort of like what happens on your turn, beginning of turn. Well, I don't have to do that. We'll just say preparing. Preparing. What does that mean? Preparing is start of turn. You move momentum. And options are from stamina to power, or from fatigue to stamina. That's sort of like the flow. You get to do what? You move one momentum. All right? So you get to choose which ones are. Other keywords that are important would be maintaining. This is like synonymous. Synonymous? Synonymous? Let's see. Maintain. Ing. There we go. Man, spell check is killing the world. Synonymous. Nice. To concentration and other games. In other words, you will have areas on your character sheet where the momentum will go to sit, lock, until you remove it, or you take damage that would remove it. So this is a little different. So if you have an idea, let me ask the last thing, and then we'll talk about all this. Knockdown. Hits and knockouts. Whenever, let me scroll down for you. Oh, this is where we gotta do. Let me do this real quick. So we have a lot of space here. Whenever you are hit, in capitals, you have to move a momentum into fatigue. All right. This can come from stamina, power, or maintained momentum. If you have all your momentum inside fatigue when hit, you are knocked out. Perfect. There we go. So in essence, you have this momentum. You have these D6s. They all sit in your stamina. You're going to do stuff. And so you're going to do stuff. Beginning of your turn, you're going to move it to... At the beginning of your turn, you're either going to move it to power, which is like you're powering up. Certain abilities are keyed in just off of stamina itself, so you can just use something, use your momentum from stamina and it goes into fatigue. You have better abilities that as you move stamina into power, you can do cool stuff with the power die, and when you use it, it goes into fatigue. If you get hit, things go into fatigue. healing or preparing where you're trying to move your fatigue up to stamina is in essence making yourself more durable. You might take a die from either stamina or power and put it into your maintaining. And if you do that, it just sits there until you finally, in essence, like break your own concentration, which you would take it from that little lock spot and you'd put it back into stamina. Or maybe it goes to fatigue, depends on the power. Or if you take a hit, you can choose to undo that one as opposed to move one of the ones that's already in stamina and powerful. I love this mechanic because we eliminate hit points, right? We don't have to do the maths on the hit points. It's a toy, right? And we talked a long time ago, about gamification involves a lot of different aspects. And one of the key aspects of gamification was having toys to play with. And so this moving these dice around to me is a fun little toy. And it's a lot of fun. What happens when you get knocked out? We'll talk about that at some point in time. It'll probably be wounds. That's how you take wounds. And that wound system, I don't know if it's going to be like Cosmere, or if it's going to be like Break, or if it's going to be like Tales from Elsewhere, right? So let's put wounds, question mark, Break influenced, Cosmere influenced, Tales from Elsewhere influenced, or like Fate influenced, right? Or it's very, or Fate slash, what's that other new game that's kind of cool? Legends in the Mist tags? Influenced? Right? Something like that. One of those. All right. Let's keep rolling. What do we got next? Attributes. I am going with classics, right? To me, there are certain ubiquitous things, and I got away from it with Scattered Isles. I went somewhere else, but I'm coming back, right? We're going back to the old school 6, right? Sinister 6. Strength, dexterity, wisdom, intellect, charisma, constitution. Why? Because I just want to say, make a con check, make a charisma check. It's in my vocabulary. There's something about having a D20 and saying these words that I grew up on. So that's why up here, we'll make sure we say it. D20 rollover system. Boop. Simple as that, right? So that is loud and proud there at the top. And then we have down here, we are using the classic attributes. We're probably going to do something. This is where we get our ICRPG influence. We're going to have something like a couple things. Your kin, ancestry will give you +1 to 2 of these, or to efforts, very ICRPG. And then probably you're going to have 6 points to distribute amongst these where you can't go above a 3, right? So you get let's just run through this. You're a human, you get +1 to any 2, right? And so you go, you know what, I'm going to have +1 strength, and I'm going to have +1 con, because I'm going kind of warrior-ish. And so that's what my human-ness gives me. And then I've got 6 more to distribute, and I do like 1 here, I do 2 here. I want to be a little bit, schmarts. So now that's 2, 3, 4. I've got 2 more. Let's do another con, 5. And then I got a little charisma going on, 6, right? Like that could be a distribution if I wanted to. And what this would also mean is this means I've got 5 momentum, because I start with 3 and I get 2 more for every constitution I have. Good, that's fun. Oops. Let's clean that up. Something to that effect. That's attributes, simple. Simple, simple, simple. Initiative. Do I need to go initiative yet? No, we don't need to go initiative. Let's do... I guess we'll go more character design. Do we do more mechanics right now? Are we talking mechanics? We already talked about resolution up here. I go into attributes. Let's do more mechanics, right? Let's get all the mechanics out of the way. So I'll go ahead and I'll bunch this down a little bit. Let's do initiative and turn, right? So initiative and turns. I think I'm going to do, this is tough. This is probably either around the table with monsters in the middle, classic, or it's draw, steal, zipper. Turns and rounds are, I think, ubiquitous concept where it's like, no, I don't do that. Which one am I doing? I'm so used to Obsidian. I'm not going to lie. I'm doing Notion right now. This is Notion so I can publish it, so you can link it, because I'm no longer using Obsidian Publish. So just a heads up. You get 1 turn every round. Round is everyone goes. That kind of thing. Nothing crazy. Action economy. Action economy. Economy. God. I didn't know the hardest part of my day was going to be spelling things. Lordy, lordy. This is where things get a little wonky for me. So I think that it's going to be 1 action and 1 move. That's simple. That's the simple action economy. The question is, what constitutes actions? And this gets tricky because of how powers are going to work later. I already have an idea of how powers work, right? And so how actions work and how they kind of dovetail off that, I don't know yet. I love creating a ton of actions, like options. I'll show you sort of like what has happened to my brain in the past. I have notes over on another slide, so I'm kind of pinging them over here. Let's do this. Previous stuff, so you can have this for your own pleasure later. I had these, right, where it's like you have your clash, your maneuver, your guard, your provoke, your coordinate, your observe, your invoke, your react. Like this was like a me trying to define what every action course sort of could be. So that was one version. Previous stuff 1. Previous stuff 2. We have these guys. There's a lot more, right? So this was back in the day. Had you seen? I kind of came up with this kind of concept of you've got team and solo actions, right? So it's like team. Let's do solo. And so like aim, brace, counter, evade, hurry, pierce, take cover, withdraw are considered solo, right? And then you had team, inspire, maneuver, manipulate, protect, rally, suppression, taunt. This was a little much. Like I'm trying to make this kind of fast, right? That's the thing is I want to make a fast game because it is fun to be, quick turns. This was when I was really looking into things like Lancer and other games that have a robust action list. Even Cosmere has a fairly robust action list to a degree. And so I had all these sort of things defined. But to be honest, I think we're going to step away from this for a second. And let me put sort of like another list that was more redacted. So here's like a more redacted list, right? Where you have strike, maneuver, guard, interact, focus, invoke, and rally. And this might have some influences from Vagabond. I think Vagabond has invoke. I think that's one of the words they use. So this might be a little bit more redacted. But like I said, wait until we get to powers, because I think powers is going to be very interesting mechanically how it's working nowadays. So we'll come back to that in a second. Let's see. All right. Let's go down. Let's sneak this in here. What other sort of mechanics do we need to talk about? Conditions? I don't know what I'm going to do with this, right? This is either... let's list out what it could be. What could we end up using for conditions? Classic, right? Classic condition list, a la 5e or draw steal, etc. Or Dragonbane. Gotta add it to the list up here. Dragonbane. Right? Influences. Influences. Because Dragonbane has a nice little list where conditions tied directly to attributes. And that's since there's 6 total conditions. And then that leads me into also Scattered Isles. Because I do like how conditions work in that system. Positive and negative offsetting conditions. With a Dragonbane Flare? Right? Flare? Is that the right flare? Yeah, that's the right flare. So that's a thought. We'll see if that ends up sticking. I'm going to come back to it, right? I'm just listing things down. We'll clean it all up and clean it up later, right? I'm not going to worry about that right now. All right, so what do we get next? We have attributes. Let's get into the other stuff. We'll do kin. Ancestry. I'm going to do your classics, right? I'm not going crazy with this right now. We are just going to do your classic. Dwarf, elf, human, halfling. We'll throw orc in there. Goblin and orc are very like. You see a lot of them lately. What else do we need? What else are the? Besides, these are like your classic 4. I think orc and goblin. I don't know if I want goblins in there. I don't know if I want orcs in there. I don't know. We'll just put other. Because when it comes down to it, you should be able to make whatever the hell you want. I don't care. Do I really care if you can make any race? Let's just say this. We'll have pre-builts. Pre-builts. And then we have building blocks. Right? So that you can make orcs, goblins, dragonborn, all of these sort of hobgoblin, whatever you want to make down there. But I'll just focus on these sort of like 4 up here. I'll probably have a cool one in there that I like, you know, some random thing. We always had like Catman on ours or things like that back in the day. So I could see doing that. And then what happens is you get... Oh, I can just take this from up here. Where did I add it? Oh, done in attributes? Where are the attributes? There it is. Yep. You get this guy. Going to give you some sort of pluses to either to attributes or efforts. Or skill efforts. Or to skill specific efforts. That kind of thing. Sweet. All right. What's my time? Like the 45 minutes, I'm going to probably switch over to my iPad because I want to do some of the character design a little bit. Not character design, but the design of the character sheet, right? All right. What do we got? Classes. This is where I've waffled. I've waffled quite a bit. Originally, I was going to do 5. Let's put it up here. Literally, I was going to do 5 torches deep. And I was going to have this sort of jobby. Let's do another FYI for your information, right? I was going to do the whole like warrior. And then warrior had subclasses of fighter, barbarian, and ranger. And then you were going to have the zealot that had the druid, priest, and paladin. And then you were going to have the mage that does the wizard, sorcerer, and warlock. And then finally, I think they say thief, and that becomes a rogue, bard, or assassin, right? This is what I was going to do. FYI previous thought. But because of the way character powers are going to work, I was finding it hard to fit all that on the character sheet, because then you would have to have on like a playbook, and in that playbook you would have to have, you know, potential abilities for the, if you're the warrior playbook, you'd have to have the potential abilities for the fighter, the ranger, and the barbarian, which is great in their system for 5 torches deep, because it's these very small little one-off powers. They're like little pluses. But that was getting a little tricky, right? That was getting a little tricky for me. So I decided to switch away from it. So what am I going to do? I'm probably going to have either the full 12 classic classes. That's one option. Or redefine by roles. What do I mean by that? Well, when you start looking at these classes, I have to think about what do I think about when I think about these classes, right? Because like when I think about a fighter, for instance, I think about very controls the battlefield, like multi functional, right? Like they control the battlefield. They've got lots of different optionality to combat. But I would probably think the monk in my brain also does this. It's just unarmed, right? So then what becomes the difference between those besides armor? And maybe the monk is more like harder to do stuff to, right? They're very resilient, you know, body, mind, and soul and spirit. So maybe there's that aspect. But so this is what I mean. Like there's probably a lot more quintessential factors that split up all these different roles. So instead of like me listing out, oh, here are the different classes, I might list out, oh, here are the different play styles. You know, focus on play styles first, then build classes around them, right? Maybe. But I know that, you know, a lot of people like playing very specific classes, and they're just expecting oh, when I play this, I do this. Another example of this is like, I have a tough time sometimes thinking differently about fighter, ranger, paladin, and rogue, specifically like the assassin. Why do I have a tough time thinking about this? Because I could make the case that each one of these is like a one-on-one duelist, right? Just because of the way different books have portrayed them. Like, you think about Drizzt Do'Urden. I read all those books when I was younger. So because of that, when I think of the Ranger, I think of Drizzt. And I think of this amazing one-on-one duelist, where someone else might think of them as purely the ranged archer, right? Who's just very good at tracking and hunting and those kind of things. But it's hard for me to divorce that narrative from my brain. Same with the Paladin, right? The Paladin, I think of this, you know, one-on-one smitey kind of dude. The fighter should be able to duel, and you've got swashbucklers, right? So it's like, it's hard to, so maybe you focus on playstyle instead. Maybe that's why, you know, games like Draw Steel focused on kits, so you can just slap that kit on. I don't know. So that's something I'm going to have to wrap my brain around at some point in time. So let's skip classes for now. Oh, I will say this. I did think of this. Well, let's come back. I'll come back to it. The next challenge. This is another big one for me, is skills. I have a problem with skills because I always want them to do lots of stuff, or I like options, right? So here's where I probably should switch over to the character sheet now, to be honest. I probably should switch over to the character sheet, but let's talk about what's going on here. So we're going to have skills. These are facts we know. Facts we know. Skills will be associated with particular attributes. skills will have effort dice associated with them. Skills will have hit chance associated with them, i.e. level. Potency? I don't know what you can call it. I don't know. Potency. Skills will have... I think that's it. They've got effort. Oh! Yeah, that's it. So we know that. Plus effort modifiers. We'll talk about that in a second. So, if we were to look at... I'll pull this up now. Un momento. This is fun. I've never done this before, so... All right. All right. So if this is, I created this skill sheet a while back, right? But if this is the idea, what we're looking at here is, let me add another layer, is that currently, I don't know where I stand on this, but the way this looks like, the way, and you know, these would be your actual... Oh, can I not draw? That wouldn't make sense. Oh, it's just delayed because of the screen sharing. Oh no, that's not fun. That's up, that's up. Oh, I can do it with my finger. It's just not using the pen. Oh, that's a bummer. Okay, that's fine. Let's erase all that. So this is what we talk about in terms of the rollover, like the potency, right? Skills are associated with potency because you would write in your skills right here, right? So it's like, this is what we'll have to talk about all this, right? But there's the idea that, let's say our skill is stealth. I am excellent at stealth, right? So, by being excellent at stealth, I got to roll a 13 or higher. Now, stealth is associated with dex. So, let's say my dex is a 2. I've got +2 over here. Now, let's say that during my character creation, I can also apply extra effort, just like ICRPG. So, let's say my stealth is actually +4. I really leaned into it. And then... my effort in it is a D10, right? Does effort associated with stealth make sense? Maybe. I don't know. We're going to find out. Maybe we switch this up. Maybe we say this is my melee attack, which is going to be, that's not a skill, but just for conversation. What does this mean? I roll a D20 and a D10 simultaneously. The D20 is going to be for do I succeed, and I just need a 13 or higher. The D10 is for how much effort or quote unquote damage I do. That +4 is either going to go to one or the other, right? So if I missed, if I rolled a 9, that +4 modifier goes to the 9. Guess what? I hit. However, I just have to take whatever the D10 is. But if I rolled a 15 on the D20, whatever the D10 rolled, let's say it rolled a 5, I can add 4 to it. So now it's a 9, right? Yay! So that is the mechanic. The question becomes, when it comes to writing this out, is how many skills am I going to have, right? Do I want to say words, meaning like as the GM, am I going to say things like make a dex check, or am I going to have to say make a stealth check? Is my job to say make a dex check, and then the player then says, can I use stealth? Or is my job to say make a stealth check? This is nuancy, but this is one of those things that I think is important when you're thinking about the game design, in terms of what's the narrative, like what's the language I want to use as a GM. I want less cognitive load. And so now it becomes, I like this idea of this. So when I created this, I wanted this to be, it's focusing obviously on this aspect. This row is the focus where you're writing skills down in terms of how good you are at them. However, there are two other ways we can consider this. We can write the skills alphabetically, right? Like in D&D, right? And there's something nice about that because then you can find the skills quickly. But is that a pain in the butt? So now this would be alphabetical, alpha. And then you would have to have this next, and you'd have lots of them, right? Because now you'd have to know which ones you were supreme in or masterful, etc. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. And then finally, the other option would be instead you have little headers, right? So now you have Dex as the like organizer, strength, Dex, whatever. And then you have skill, skill, skill. And then after those skills, these would be alphabetical. Or maybe they're not. Maybe they're blank because you're filling them in. I don't know. Depends on if there's a question of, is every skill on the character sheet, or is that not the case, right? So, is every skill on the character sheet or not? That becomes part of this now question. And so what skills are optional, right? Well, let me switch some stuff over here again. Beepity beep boop bop. So I'm probably going to create all three of those character sheets at some point in time. And then I'll just figure out from there. Which one do I like? Which one looks good? Right? So here is a laundry list. I went through and created these already. Here's sort of like a laundry list option, right? Where I tried to make 5 skills per attribute. This is a scenario where you would not have every skill listed on your character sheet, right? You just wouldn't. You wouldn't have them all there. Let's do this. Let's do 6 skills per attribute option, which is this one. And is this the best option? We don't know. We'll get there. Versus, I did this previously. We're skipping all over the place. Like this is when I only had 4 attributes, but it was very condensed, right? So it's like very, this is more vagabondy, I would say. More vagabondy, if that's a way you could say that. Where you have these sort of like very finite, quick lists. So that might be an option, right? So maybe there is only 3. I'd have to figure out what those are. But 3 skills per attribute. Right? And the other question is, are combat skills associated with attributes? I think this is a fair question, right? We all know the trouble we get into when we do things like Dex monkeys are an issue, right? Because Dex monkeys, they've got amazing. It's back in the day, you could just pump Dex, and who cared about strength? And you were awesome. It's like you just do Dex and charisma, and all of a sudden the world is your oyster, right? So there's a question of, we could probably do 3 attributes per, and have combat be separate. And to be honest, this is where Cosmere RPG has influenced me, in the sense that I like the idea of having heavy combat, light combat, ranged combat, something like that. There could be a question between, and then like, this is going to sound terrible, but special ranged combat. This is guns, right? We're talking guns. But the idea, I like this concept of heavy combat and light combat, because what this does is now this heavy combat, and I don't think Cosmere did this, but it influenced me to think about this. Let me get you in here a little bit closer. Come on in. Come here. Is that heavy combat to me is now a combination of big weapons and thick armor. I don't know if I should be using these adjectives. And light combat is, light armor and finesse weapons, right? So, like, I like that they're sort of embedded in there, right? So it's an approach. It's more of an approach to combat. So if we look at this big old list, heavy combat's a part of strength. Light combat is a part of agility. But the problem here is that now we would have ranged combat traditionally would fit underneath this dexterity, right? Unless I did something like knave and I stuck it under wisdom, right? If with an attribute, go with knave under wisdom? Question mark. That was Ben's solution to the Dex monkey. I think it was pretty clever, right? I get it. Some people thought thematically it didn't make sense, but I get it. You're dealing with an issue, right? This is all together. All right. Finally, so that takes us into skills. We've had no solution there, but we'll come back to it. And I'll be working on this page even when I'm not doing a live stream. But we're going to come back to that. We'll think on that. Next, I have this idea of archetypes. Archetypes, or, of course, archetypes or personalities. And I like this idea that when you are doing... I'm clicking stuff and I shouldn't be. I like the idea that when you're choosing your character, you don't go through and choose all the skills, right? You don't have this laundry list of skills that then you have to figure out, I'm going to take this and this and that and this and this. You could. That's an option. You could. But I like the idea instead of having these personalities. So you could have personalities like the reluctant hero. I'm used to obsidian. Right? The chosen one. Fallen hero. Grizzled veteran. The roguish scoundrel. Outcast, or as Bruno always says, the pariah, right? Lone wolf. Like, these are character arcs to me, right? These are types of people. The noble knight, sellsword, the scholar, seeker of knowledge. These to me are interesting, like, personalities. The face, or the charmer. And so what you would do is that then you would have whatever the list of skills ends up being in the game, which is once again we're dependent on this up here, is that when you choose this reluctant hero, right? Whoops. What ends up happening is it comes with a set of skills. Right, so the reluctant hero is notice / awareness. I'm just writing some of the skills from before: insight, stealth, move or acrobatics, endure, persuade, etc. Right, and reluctant hero to me is like Bilbo Baggins. Maybe Neo, like that kind of thing. Like, you're going to become the hero even though you don't want to be there. And so what does that sort of character arc or that character play style look like? Here are the skills. And so what you would do is, in essence, you choose your arc, and list the skills associated with that arc in the correct order. or potency, right? Or level, right? Meaning that, we talked about already in that character sheet that different skills are going to have different degrees, masterful, etc. And so, like, this person is technically, they're an expert in these top 3, and then they're great at these, and they're okay at this, etc. And you got to put them in. Now, do you have to choose an arc? No, but I just think that it's nice to have that sort of thing. So that would be the next thing I did. I've got this whole thing on assigning skills and effort. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to drop that in here because I don't have to type all that out, but just talk about it. Assigning skills and effort. And what's this about? Currently, and here's again, we might not have, if we have less skills, that character sheet could have less slots, right? So we don't know what this is going to look like yet. But the idea being that skills are ranked down the line: masterful, excellent, good, okay. Currently, that's how many you have, but we might not have those. Classes are going to have skills associated with them. Choices, right? So, for instance, if you were the fighter, you get to choose light combat versus heavy combat. You get to choose, I don't know, like notice versus intimidate, right? Like, there might be a couple, like, these are quintessential concepts behind a fighter. They would have these skills, but you can see how, like, I could have the heavy combat intimidator or the twitchy light combat person who's aware of things, right? So it's like you get options. You do 2 of them, maybe 3 pairings, and that's the first thing you do. You take those 3 and you put them way up high. They're going to be like masterful, or they're going to be excellent. And after that, you would then take your archetype and you would fill those in. And then after you've filled those in, you're going to apply effort to them and add effort. And there's some other things in terms of, like, what happens when you are ranking them. Like, how do you assign the effort associated with them, and how do you create the modifiers? Well, that's kind of in here, right? And then you would add these modifiers. And you add modifiers. Blah, blah. So this is sort of, I talked about this in the last video of what it kind of looks like, potentially. I'll go through it real quick. So the idea being, it's not exhausting. It's just, there's some other stuff I want to get to. The idea being that we have all these skills. I guess I'm kind of wavering just because the idea is, I don't know how many skills we have, but we'll get there. So the idea being you have these skills. We don't know how they're organized, and they're going to have some sort of potency or level associated with them: masterful, excellent, etc. You're going to gain 2 skills based on your class. One of them goes to masterful, one of them goes to excellent. Then you choose your archetype. Those get filled in. So meaning that you're going to have another masterful from your archetype, 2 excellent from your archetype, 4 good from your archetype, 5 okay from your archetype, if we were using this current design. Then, after those are there, you would then choose, okay, what's my dice level, my effort level with all of these? Well, here it shows effort can be anywhere from a D4 to a D20. For your 2 masterful, because you've got 2 in masterful, you're either going to make them both D8s or 1 a D6 and 1 a D10. For your experts, you're going to choose either to make them all D8s or 1 a D6, 1 a D8, 1 a D10, your choices. Then for your good and your okay, I liked this idea of it being random, right? And it just random straight down the line. So you roll a dice and you find out, oh, I've got a lot of effort with that one, and I'm very low effort for some of the other ones, right? Or vice versa. And so you do that for your goods and your okays, and then you're done, right? Then you now know what your skill sits at in terms of its level, and you know how much effort you can apply with that skill. Then you assign your modifier. Your modifier is every skill is associated with an attribute, so you just add that in there. And then you get an extra 4 effort that you can spread around, just like ICRPG, where you can put a 2 maximum into one thing, right? So you could end up, people that min-max, they're probably going to end up with a 5 modifier for something, right? And that's okay, because even if they are masterful at something, which is an 11 or higher, If they've put all their fish into one basket, so they've got +5, technically that means they got to roll a 6 or higher for success, which is very good, obviously. But that's on par with a lot of games. Like Dragonbane, you can have a 6 right off the bat, or 6 or higher in Dragonbane. You can have a 6 or higher in Vagabond. Like, that happens. And so that's why I was kind of mathing it towards, like, if you want to go all in on one ability, that's fine. You're just not going to be as great as other ones, and that's okay. Now, we might adjust that. We might adjust that so that if you can only get to that 6 or higher if you're supreme in a skill. And if you're masterful in a skill, maybe this all just bumps down 1 with that into account, where this becomes 13 and supreme becomes 11, because we understand that most everyone's going to have a +5 with their base skill. And so a +5 would take this to an 8 or higher, which is probably more on par with like what Professor Dungeon Master says, where his like go-to for D20 rolls are like 8, 10, and 13 or something like that, right? So maybe that's where we go. We'll see. Gotta play it. Always gotta just play it. All right, so that's adding modifiers. I want to have bonds in here. I'll write down my thoughts on that real quick. So here are the bonds. I don't know what they are yet. I like them in games, especially Avatar. Avatar: The Last Airbender, their RPG had some really cool bonds. And they had some really cool just stuff in there for like emotional gameplay journeys. Like, it was some cool stuff in there. So I think that there could be something really cool. Character bonds, just figure out the different types. Blah, 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 blah. So here are some optional ones. Like, you've got the ally, someone you trust. You got the rival, someone you're competitive with. You got someone you owe. You got family. And then you have this student-mentor relationship. I like these. These might be the bonds you kind of choose from if you want them. And then you've probably got something like, like allies, that fits. You might just be allies with everybody, all gravy. I don't know what I'm going to, I'm going to put this in here because, experiences, right? So this was got to put our influences, got to be true to our influences. Let's put Daggerheart. And let's put 13th Age, right? Because that's where I think of when I think of experiences. Experiences in Daggerheart, in essence, they're kind of like... did I put Fate up here? Got to put Fate, right? Everybody's getting influenced. Or I'm being influenced by everybody. Whichever. In essence, the way that... Daggerheart works is you have these experiences that give you pluses to rolls. It's kind of a combination of skills and backgrounds, right? And fate aspects. It's this idea that you have this sort of like sentence that if it's true to you, you can then roll it and you can get, or when you roll a skill or something, you get bonus, right? So it's like, I'm the wizard that never forgets, right? And that would be like a fate aspect. Well, if I've got a knowledge check or something, I can always add, I can invoke that for +2. And I think experiences is a really cool way that they do it in Daggerheart. So the question is, does that become something in this? I don't know. It could be something like that, but we'll see. All right, defenses. I'm only going to do this for an hour, so I've got a couple more minutes. Defenses. This is going to be Cosmere influenced. I really like how Cosmere does this. I was going back and forth between Cosmere and 13th Age. So if you're unfamiliar with those systems, what 13th Age does, and I ended up blending them, right? I think I ended up blending them, but I'm not sure. So 13th Age has body and mind, and depending on your class, that could be anywhere from 10 to 12 for either of these, I think. I could be wrong. Meaning, like, if I'm a fighter, I've got a 12 base body and a 10 base mind, right? And then the idea being that you add, for body, it's either strength, con, or dex, whichever one. And then this is whiz, int, charisma. But it's the mean, or the middle stat of these. Meaning that if my strength is +4, and my con is +2, and my dex is +0, I would add 2. So then I would have a 14, right? And so I liked this idea. I thought it was really, really clever. But what I ended up doing instead was having this sort of a little bit more in line with Cosmere, where what you have is your body is a combination of your strength and dex, your mind is your wisdom and int, and your spirit is your con and charisma. And so, and it's 8+. So if you end up having a +3 strength and a +1 dex, that's +4, so that'd be 12. Now, I think that it's going to be class-based because I think that most fighters, they choose dex or strength, right? They don't max out both. You're not going to have +3/+3 or +3/+2. So maybe it's like if you're a fighter, you're going to get 10 here, and then boom, boom. If you're a monk, you know, monks are very resilient with everything. Maybe it's like 9 across the board or 10 across the board, right? I don't know. I don't know how that's going to... We're going to have to figure out the maths on this to see what most characters end up choosing with these stats. But it's something like 8 to 10 here. Eight to 10 sort of across the board there, right? So you're going to end up with 8 to 10 in some regards there. And so that would be, let's just guess it out here. If you're a fighter, you've got +3 strength. You've got +1 dex, +1 int, 0 whiz, +2 con, +1 charisma. I don't know if this is what we had before, but let's say that's what it is. That would mean that you have a, let's just say 14 body. Actually, let's go with 8s. Let's say everything's 8, right? So that'd be 12 body, and then we have 9 mind, and we have con, charisma 3, 11 spirit. Maybe at first level this is okay. Maybe there's armor and magic items that you have to acquire in order to do this. Because monsters, I don't think monsters are going to have modifiers. They might. I'm debating on monster attacks are d20 plus level, right? So if it's a level 1 monster, they're going to get a +1. I might not have that. It might just be monster attacks are just flat, right? And that's why these are kind of lower. Because this is still, if this is your body, which is, I don't know, we'll find out. But something to this degree. We'll do this, question mark. So we'll get there, right? I think that's good. I think that's a good place to be. All right. Let's talk about the last thing that we really need to, because we're not getting into the other stuff today. Let's talk about powers. This is the big one, and I probably should have started this earlier, to be honest. What is this? I don't want that. Show me this. I'm telling you, Notion. It's nice. There's some nice features of it, but I miss my Obsidian. Now, I love this combination of Vagabond and Crown and Skull. That's where my head is currently. I love them. I love them both. They're both really cool. Meaning that if you've seen Vagabond has this really great. I'm gonna pull it over because I think I have notes on it. Vagabond has this really great magic system, right? That is very sweet. And in essence, what it has this sort of like delivery system where I'll do this. Vagabond. And then I'm going to write this out. So here's the Vagabond sort of system. And what it has is it's like you choose the cast. There's a spell type you're going to choose. I'm going to choose Frost or whatever the case might be. Well, always your cast is base like touch. Like it's going to be range touch. And it's going to be 1d6 damage, and it's going to be duration like instant, right? Like that's the base spell. And now spells themselves, like if you happen to use Frost, it always has some other effect. Like maybe it always slows monsters down, just naturally, whatever. And then what you can do is you can bump that puppy up. For every mana point you spend, you can add another d6. So I could spend 3 mana points, and now this is touch. It's a Frost touch instant 46 damage, right? Or I could spend 2 mana point to make it a cone, right? And so now I'm going to cone it for 1d6, right? Really cool. Really, really, really cool. Crown Skull, what it does is that let's now skip over here. And I looked at a couple games. I looked at Open Legend because it has its Banes and Boons. I looked at a lot of different things. Well, what Crown and Skull does, which is really cool, is it has these spell effects. Like it has its base spells, right? Like Arcane Lock and all this kind of stuff. But in essence, it has these spell effect groups, which are really cleverly written, right? Like Accuracy, Blast, Banish, Area, which is similar to Vagabond. But then it also has... Is it Crown and Skull that has all of it, or ICRPG? ICRPG has limitations, I think. Anyways, I digress. So there's these spell effects that are similar. So it's more the effects, not whereas Vagabond is the effect is in the spell regardless. You're changing how big or potent that spell is. Crown and Skull is you're adjusting how many effects sit on top of it, right? That's the main difference. And there's potential limitations. Like in Crown and Skull, you can say, I'm going to make a limitation on this spell so that I can save points that I would normally spend, right? So let's kind of combine these two in essence, right? So Vagabond is saying base spell, but can spend points to change the shape, duration, and potency, right? That's what Vagabond's doing. Crown and Skull is saying base spell plus more effects and potential limitations to improve economic efficiency. I know that sounds terrible, but in essence, that's what it is. Meaning, like there is a as an example, I have it in here, is that you can make like spells cost X amount of points to kind of create. It's just I don't know the calculations, but you can make it so that it is only campfire magic, meaning that you have to be, as long as you're in a safe, you can only be in a safe place to cast it, but you save 3 points when you do that, right? That's really neat to me. I think that's cool. So what did this sort of come together for me after kind of thinking through this and considering this? Well, it kind of also blended a little bit of the first one, 5 Torches Deep. So it's like you have a class, right? Now you have this fighter. And on their character sheet, they're going to have some passive abilities for them, right? Probably similar to ICRPG, right? ICRPG has some really cool passive abilities, like if you are a warrior, which I think is like the kind of class, they have this option of you get to choose. Are you like a ranged warrior, or are you a this melee warrior, right? And if you're melee, it's like you can crit all of your let's say, I got them right here. Slayer. If you're attacking an enemy already, so it's the second time you've attacked an enemy, you're doing a D12 effort instead of your normal effort. A defender, your allies close to you all get your defensive stat. A pit fighter, when you take damage, add that damage to your next attack on someone. So it's really neat, right? It's really crazy stuff. So you're going to have some passive abilities as a fighter. But then you're going to have class powers, power blocks, class stamina blocks, and class limitations. So imagine on that character sheet, you have different power blocks and stamina blocks. And what do I mean by these? Well, it's like, for instance, momentum already does something base. We didn't even talk about that, but I'll fill that in later. Like, what is it momentum can do naturally, right? Naturally, if you have power, you can take that d6 and roll it, and you can add the result to your effort or add it to your attack roll. And when you do, then that power becomes fatigued, right? That's great. That's really nice. A construct people. I'm just seeing this now. Oh, sorry. Construct people from Jonathan Frost. Sorry about that, buddy. I missed you. Yeah, but I think a construct people would be cool. I like constructs. I want to put it in there. You are not here now, but your thing is in. Constructs. Shane. Now I know. I'm in creative mode. I got to get it. You know what I've been through lately, and so I'm got to get into it. Good to see you, buddy. Class limitations. What was I talking about here? Oh, so that's one thing you can do with momentum, right? You can take this power and you can spend it in that way. Well, now you can think of these power blocks as similar to like Vagabond or like Crown and Skull, where it's like maybe you can spend one, spend power to add +1 targets, right? Or spend to add second. Well, no, that's we don't need a second attack. So now it's like a cleave, right? So it's this power block that allows you to have a cleave. Maybe stamina. You've got spend to get plus move, right? So now you've got these concepts here. If this is more like a barbarian, maybe you've got something like spend one less, but have -5 to attack, right? So the idea being here that you've got these little building blocks that when you make your attacks, it's not that you have, I have the cleave ability, and this cleave ability is the action I take, and I automatically do all this stuff. No, it's like I've got a couple power blocks down here, and I'm going to roll, and I happen to have some power, so I'm going to go ahead and add 2 targets on this, right? Or I'm going to turn this into a cone if I've got that ability, or whatever, right? So now you've got this. I think it's a little bit more interesting. Hopefully it's not, what's the word? Cognitive load. But here's the other thing is that like your character class is going to have, 6 of these, and that's how you kind of level, right? Like you're going to level up by saying, right now I have these 2 blocks available. Later on, I'm going to get these 2, but I'm still going to have these other cool passive abilities like, exploding dice. If you're the barbarian, right? So now you got this barbarian who has exploding dice. One of their limitations down here is reckless. But this is cool because what I like about this is you get to spend one less momentum, right? So it's like you're going to take these limitations in order to be able to spend less momentum. So now on your turn, you might say like, you know what? I'm going to take -5 and have 2 targets on this attack. I'm going to cleave with -5. And I didn't actually spend any of the momentum, right? That's neat. I think that's neat. Versus saying, you know what? No, I don't need that -5. I am going to cleave regardless, so I'm spending one of my power, right? So, yeah. So that's where my head's at with that. At this point in time, we're not going to go into the GM stuff. It's been an hour, a little over an hour. And I'm getting little notes passed to me by my daughters. I think it's time to eat some food. I think there's some kick-ass pancakes out there. So this is where I'm at. I'd be curious your thoughts. Leave some comment thoughts in terms of skills, and leave some comment thoughts in terms of the character sheet design, the layout. So it's all about those skills right now. I think if I lock in those skills, I can then start to move forward on the classes and those power blocks. I think everything else looking fine. All right, y'all. That's it from me. J-Face out.